It was 1:38 a.m. under the moonlit skies of Crimea. The air was still, the steppe silent. Inside one of Russia's most heavily fortified air defense bases, soldiers were sleeping consoles glowing dimly in radar bunkers. On paper, this was the sky shield of Crimea, a fortress worth over $500 million, guarded by S-400 launchers, Panzer batteries, and multi-spectrum radars. Moscow boasted that nothing could penetrate it. Not stealth fighters, not ballistic missiles, not even saturation strikes. But that night, something slipped through. No sirens wailed, no radars pinged, no alarms sounded. And then, fire. Within just 90 seconds, the base erupted into flames. Shockwaves rippled across the countryside like a low earthquake, and a fiery glow lit the sky for miles, visible even from orbiting satellites. Black smoke climbed more than 1,000 feet. The sheer scale was staggering. But the real shock was not the explosion, it was the absence of warning. Not a single incoming drone was detected. Not one was intercepted. Russia's proudest fortress had been caught asleep, and by the time soldiers scrambled to their posts, it was already too late. How could this happen? How could a $500 million stronghold defended by some of the most advanced systems on Earth collapse to what Russian generals once called toys? The answer lies in a revolution unfolding quietly across modern warfare. A revolution where cheap, disposable drones can defeat the most expensive air defenses ever built. At exactly 2:01 a.m., 19 Ukrainian drones crossed into contested airspace. They weren't stealth bombers. They weren't cruise missiles. They were homemade machines, 11 Scythe UAVs for long-range flight, and 8 Beaver FPVs modified for kamikaze strikes. Individually, they looked insignificant, but together they formed a coordinated, autonomous swarm. They flew nap of the earth, skimming treetops, hugging hills, staying just feet above terrain. Russian radars tilted skyward to track aircraft, and missiles simply couldn't see them. The low airspace was blind. Worse still, the drones flew in silence. No radio links, no GPS signals. Russia's jamming towers, normally effective against satellite-guided weapons, had nothing to jam. The drones needed no corrections, they already knew their paths. Guided by terrain-matching AI, they compared live video feeds with preloaded satellite maps, calculating position without broadcasting a single signal. They were ghosts. By the time radar screens lit up, the drones were already inside the perimeter, barely a mile out, seconds from impact. Panic spread in the command bunkers. Panzer operators scrambled to lock targets, but their scopes flickered with false echoes. The drones were too small, too slow, too low. Their radar cross-sections were smaller than birds. Missiles were fired in desperation, 2 detonated in empty sky. 1 drone was clipped by chance. 17 made it through. 17 against a fortress designed to repel hundreds. Then the nightmare truly began. The swarm split into 3 coordinated strike groups. The first group dove straight for the radar command hub, the beating heart of the S-400 system. Small, shaped charges ripped through reinforced walls, destroying processors and cutting power. Within seconds, radar feeds went dark. The base was blind. The second group struck the fuel pipeline junctions, igniting aviation fuel from within. Small blasts triggered massive secondary explosions as vapors raced through pipelines like fuses. Fireballs erupted across the depot. The third wave hit the vehicle yards and missile shelters. Trucks, radar platforms, and fuel tankers parked close together went up in flames. A drone pierced the roof of a missile container. Its detonation cracked windows 5 miles away. In under 5 minutes, Ukraine's drone swarm reduced the sky shield of Crimea into twisted steel and smoldering craters. The most devastating loss was the Big Bird 91N6E radar array worth $120 million. A direct hit collapsed at his rotating head, severing the fire control links of the entire S-400 network. Without it, launchers became useless tubes of metal. $500 million of defenses had been turned into scrap by drones costing less than $5,000 each. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the explosions. For a 50-mile radius, Russia's air defense bubble went dark. What had been declared untouchable was now blind. And it wasn't just a tactical breach, it was a psychological earthquake. If this base could be breached, what else couldn't be nuclear storage sites, strategic bomber fields? The Kremlin's very idea of security began to unravel. Russian soldiers on the ground described chaos. Radar screens flickered. Orders contradicted. Gunners hesitated, terrified of hitting fuel tanks. No one knew who was in charge. A fortress designed for top-down coordination collapsed the moment it faced an unexpected bottom-up attack. And that was Ukraine's true victory. They didn't need to destroy everything. They just needed to destroy the enemy's ability to see. By blinding the base, Ukraine opened the skies. No radar, no guidance. No cohesion. Just silence. And in modern war, whoever controls the first 5 minutes controls everything. For Russia, it was not just hardware lost, it was confidence lost. For Ukraine, it was proof. The battlefield belongs not to those with the largest arsenal, but to those with the sharpest idea. Western analysts later estimated the strike destroyed over $250 million worth of equipment, from radar trucks to missile shelters. But the real cost was doctrinal. Russia's belief in heavy centralized, layered air defenses had just been shattered. Decades of investment in big bombs and big shields collapsed in 5 minutes against smart swarms, and the world was watching. Military planners from Washington to Beijing to Tehran took notes. If Ukraine on a tight budget could blind Russia's strongest fortress, what could others do? The age of mass arsenals may be ending. The age of intelligent swarms may just be beginning. Russia called them toys. Ukraine turned them into scalpels. Machines no bigger than suitcases armed with code and cunning rewrote the rules of war in real time. What was once a monument to Russian dominance is now a skeleton of steel glowing red in the night. The question remains, if a swarm of drones can silence a fortress, what does that mean for every other untouchable base around the world? Airfields, ports, power grids. No place is safe anymore. And that perhaps is the most dangerous lesson of all. In the end, Russia did not lose because it lacked weapons. It lost because it underestimated imagination. The strike in Crimea proved that in the 21st century, wars are not decided by who has more missiles, but by who understands the enemy's weakest link. Ukraine owned the first 5 minutes, and that was enough to change everything. And so the night sky over Crimea carries a warning. For every military power on Earth, the age of big bombs is giving way to the age of smart swarms, and the battlefield will belong not to the largest, but to the cleverest. The attack on Crimea's air defense fortress was more than a tactical victory. It was a revelation about the shifting nature of power in the 21st century. A base once advertised as impenetrable fell in under 5 minutes, and this collapse teaches us that military strength is no longer measured in the weight of steel or the price tag of equipment. Instead, it is measured by adaptability, by the speed of innovation, and by the ability to think differently than the opponent. The first lesson is about the fragility of centralization. Russia's Sky Shield was designed as a top-down system reliant on radar arrays, command bunkers, and synchronized batteries. The Ukrainian drones attacked from the bottom up, disrupting the very heart of that centralized network. Once the radar hub was blinded, the entire system became worthless. This proves that in modern conflict, complex centralized defenses can collapse instantly when confronted with small distributed threats. The second lesson is the triumph of silence. These drones did not announce themselves with radio chatter or GPS signals. They navigated by comparing terrain in real time, invisible to jammers, and undetectable by radar beams pointed toward the sky. By exploiting silence and stealth, they revealed that control of the electromagnetic spectrum is no longer enough. The real battlefield is now in the realm of algorithms, artificial intelligence, and autonomy. The third lesson extends beyond tactics and touches doctrine. For decades, militaries assumed that survival depended on expensive shields against expensive weapons, missiles against missiles, jets against jets. The Crimea strike overturned that logic. When drones costing less than a family car destroyed assets worth $500 million, the imbalance was not just financial, but doctrinal. It exposed a truth that smaller powers will embrace the future lies not in matching arsenals, but in undermining them with creativity. The fourth lesson is psychological. When the radars went dark, Russian operators hesitated, commanders contradicted each other, and gunners fired into empty skies. The fortress did not fall simply because drones pierced its walls. It fell because confidence evaporated. The silence after the explosions, 50 miles of blind airspace, was more terrifying than the fireballs themselves. This reveals that modern warfare is as much about breaking trust in systems as it is about destroying hardware. Finally, the broader lesson is a warning to the world. If Ukraine could cripple Russia's most guarded air defense hub, then no port, airfield, or energy grid anywhere on Earth is beyond reach. The strike suggests that the age of military giants is giving way to an era where even small actors armed with cheap machines and clever code can redraw maps of power. The ultimate weapon is no longer mass, but imagination. The attack on Crimea's most fortified air defense base, once described as the Sky Shield, shattered long-held assumptions about military security. Worth over $500 million and guarded by S-400 launchers, Panzer batteries, and sophisticated radars, the fortress was thought to be impenetrable. Yet in less than 5 minutes, 19 Ukrainian drones costing only a few $1,000s each reduced it to fire and rubble. The first lesson is that the age of invulnerability is over. No matter how advanced or expensive a defensive system may be, it is never beyond reach. This collapse exposed the truth that the most dangerous threat is not always the strongest missile, but the unexpected weakness in a system's design. A deeper lesson is the rise of autonomous swarms as decisive weapons of the 21st century. The Ukrainian drones were not reliant on satellite signals or radio guidance. They navigated through terrain matching algorithms, flying low, silent, and undetectable until it was too late. Russian radars calibrated for aircraft and missiles simply could not see them. Jamming towers had nothing to disrupt because the drones emitted no signals. This demonstrated that artificial intelligence and autonomy have rewritten the rules of air defense. The balance of power now favors small, inexpensive machines that exploit blind spots rather than massive arsenals designed to counter traditional threats. Equally important is the psychological dimension. Russia's soldiers, trained to rely on centralized command and radar feeds, were thrown into chaos the moment the systems went dark. Operators fired missiles blindly, commanders issued contradictory orders, and panic spread across the base. The destruction of the Big Bird radar array, a single blow worth $120 million, crippled the entire S-400 network. Launchers that looked formidable only hours earlier became useless steel tubes. This collapse of confidence, more than the explosions themselves, revealed the fragility of complex systems when morale is broken. Modern war, therefore, is not only about physical destruction, but also about undermining trust in the very systems designed to protect. The global implications are profound. If Ukraine, operating on limited resources, could cripple Russia's strongest fortress with improvised drones, then no military base in the world can consider itself safe. Airfields, nuclear storage facilities, ports, and energy grids are all potential targets for similar swarms. The strike exposed the cost asymmetry that defines the new age of conflict. Weapons worth a few $1,000s can dismantle defenses worth hundreds of millions. This will not only inspire smaller nations, but also reshape doctrines in Washington, Beijing, and Tehran, where military planners must now prepare for a world where size and cost no longer guarantee security. Finally, the most enduring lesson is that imagination has become the ultimate weapon. Ukraine did not succeed in Crimea by matching Russia's arsenal. It succeeded by thinking differently, by exploiting weaknesses no one else saw. In doing so, it revealed that the decisive factor in war is not who has the biggest bombs, but who can adapt fastest and strike first in ways the enemy cannot anticipate. The night sky over Crimea was therefore more than a battlefield. It was a message to every power on Earth. The age of big bombs and big shields is fading, and the age of smart swarms has begun. The night sky over Crimea is therefore not just a scene of destruction, but a prophecy. It tells us that the old rules of war, more bombs, bigger shields, stronger walls, are dying. The future belongs to those who see differently, think faster, and strike where no one expects. Must account for the fact that victory is often achieved when an enemy loses confidence, rather than when every weapon is destroyed. Finally, Operation Black Swarm reveals that the future of warfare belongs to imagination. Nations that invest only in expensive traditional systems risk being outmaneuvered by those who innovate with limited means. The essence of strategic survival now lies in adaptability, in the ability to turn weaknesses into strengths, and in recognizing that even a fortress can fall if approached with creativity. In the stillness of a dark night near Belgorod, one of Russia's most fortified nuclear bases was struck in a way that shocked the world. The attack, later known as Operation Black Swarm, revealed not only the ingenuity of Ukraine's military planners, but also the vulnerabilities of modern warfare. This was more than a battle. It was a lesson in how imagination, improvisation, and adaptability can overcome even the most advanced defenses. From the first drone launches to the final fiery collapse